There have been a lot of offseason moves in the NFL that have been huge for fantasy, but these ain't them. By the way, if you haven't already joined us on the Fantasy Flock, go ahead and click that link in the description below. It's flockfantasy.com/endgame. If you sign up with that link, you get 30% off any subscription, and you get access to our rankings, bonus articles, bonus videos, and our Discord server where we're active all year round. Let's start with the first potentially disastrous move, and that would be the Tampa Bay Bucks signing Baker Mayfield, presumably to start at quarterback. Chris, in how many ways does this spell doom for the Bucks?
A lot of ways it spells doom for the Bucks, and especially Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And I would say even more so Mike Evans than Chris Godwin, but really for both of them. I mean, if you're talking yourself into Mike Evans or Chris Godwin because they're talented or they're good players or look what they've done in the past, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Like, how many times do you have to go through the Baker Mayfield experience? I mean, he had Odell Beckham in his prime. He had Jarvis Landry still in his prime. He had DJ Moore in his prime. And none of those guys were any good with Baker Mayfield. He's a wide receiver killer when it comes to fantasy. It's either going to be him or Kyle Trask. I'm so far out on both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I doubt I'll have them in any leagues, in any drafts, because they're going to go way too early for me. This is a disaster for the Bucs.
Yeah, I mean, we do mock drafts all offseason, every week, multiple times per week. And early on, with all the uncertainty, we didn't know what was going to happen in Tampa Bay. I'd see Godwin fall to like round 3 or 4. Evans fall into like round 5. I'm like, okay, I can't pass that up. It's too good. They're just talented players. I'll take a chance. Well, you can forget all that. I'm out on them. There's no way I'm going to draft them, honestly. Because like you said, what's plan B? If Baker Mayfield gets hurt, doesn't work out, Kyle Trask, is that really what they're going into 2023 with? I'm sorry, I have to be out on this entire offense. Then a move that might be good for the player involved, but bad for the player he's joining. That would be David Montgomery going to the Detroit Lions. Good offensive line, good system to run with. But what about DeAndre Swift?
Man, just when we think maybe we will get full DeAndre Swift, they go out and sign David Montgomery, who basically is, Jamal Williams, just maybe slightly better in the passing game. I mean, you got to think it's going to be more of the same of last year. I mean, the hope here is that at least it's just David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift and not David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and Justin Jackson or Craig Reynolds or some other random running back. Hopefully it's just the two of them. But still, this definitely puts a cap on Swift's upside and on his ceiling. And, Swift being a top 5, top 3 PPR running back, probably not going to happen again this year.
I would just say this keeps the lid on his upside exactly where it was last year. I mean, you're just swapping out Williams for Montgomery. He's a guy who will probably score double-digit touchdowns because they're going to give him the ball in the goal line, not Swift. I think this just further proves that this staff does not believe DeAndre Swift is capable of being a workhorse back or really anything close to it. And so at this point, there's no way you can rank him any higher than you had him at the end of last season. And then another case of don't overreact to early free agency. Just when everyone had Khalil Herbert going to the moon, now Deontay Foreman comes in. How much do you think this affect Herbert? I mean, who's going to be the lead back here, or are we just stuck in another timeshare?
I think we're going to be stuck in another timeshare because Foreman was good last year. In fact, if you look at the numbers, Foreman and Montgomery had very similar rushing numbers on very similar attempts. They were basically the same guy. Now Foreman not going to catch any passes, but guess what? Neither is Khalil Herbert. Look, maybe Herbert is still technically the lead back here. I'm not sure. But it's not going to be, Herbert getting 65, 70% of the touches as I guess we had hoped after David Montgomery left. It's probably going to be close to a 50-50. And who knows? I mean, Foreman could eventually edge him out. And Foreman will probably honestly be the better value in drafts because people still are probably going to let him fall very, very late. And if something were to ever happen to Herbert, Foreman would have tons of upside. But certainly, the Herbert hype lasted all of 3 or 4 days, and now it's over.
Yeah, and you nailed it. A lot of people probably don't even know where Deontay Foreman wound up or didn't care. but you should, because I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up with more touches than Herbert in this offense. I mean, look, he only got a 1-year deal. It's kind of a prove-it deal. Obviously, his injury history, they're not going to invest a lot in him. But Foreman is a guy that seems to have that motivation. He has that confidence. He's somebody I think will try to take over this backfield. And Herbert, look, he's always had limitations. He does not play on passing downs, period. Foreman isn't exactly known as the greatest receiver, but more so than Herbert. And so I think as the bigger back, as the better receiving back, he's the guy who really is going to be the 1A in this offense. So Khalil Herbert is, at best, what he was last year, a 1B. Talking about Jamal Williams, no longer Detroit. That's because he's with New Orleans right now. What does that mean, if anything, for Alvin Kamara?
Well, it's not good news for Alvin Kamara because you got to think touchdowns were almost a myth last year, and now they're probably going to be a myth again this year. And that even assumes however many games he's even on the field for with that suspension. But I also think this is bad for Jamal Williams because at least in Detroit, he was the early down guy. He was the goal line guy. But they have another guy in New Orleans named Taysom Hill who loves to vulture touchdowns too. So I don't think we can expect another 17 touchdown season from Jamal Williams. Maybe he'll be good the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, however many games Alvin Kamara is gone. But once Kamara comes back, Kamara's going to get more touches than DeAndre Swift did. This is bad for both Kamara and Jamal. This is just a terrible, terrible backfield now that I think you have to avoid.
Yeah, so if you look at it, New Orleans offense should be a lot better than they were last year because Derek Carr now at quarterback, Jamal Williams to complement Kamara, assuming Kamara plays because he's not suspended. Michael Thomas, yeah, let's just pretend he'll stay healthy for more than 2 games. They should be better. But Jamal Williams won't be better because he happened to play in Detroit where they had a really good offensive line, still do, much better than the Saints offensive line, and had an insane amount of carries inside the 10 and inside the 5 even. I mean, how many 1-yard plunges did Williams get last year? He's not going to get that many this year. So I don't expect him to be nearly as productive as last year. And Kamara, he already wasn't scoring touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Why would that improve now with Williams there? Now on the receiving front, Brandon Cooks is still in Texas, just moving to Dallas. So the Cowboys made their move, no, not to get Odell Beckham, but to get Brandon Cooks as number 2 guy behind CeeDee Lamb. Does this mean anything for Lamb or just the secondary receivers?
I think it's no issue for Lamb. Plays a totally different role than Brandon Cooks. Yeah, I think Lamb will still be an absolute stud. I'm not moving him down at all. I still think he's my wide receiver 5. But Gallup was a guy that I was kind of on as a sneaky late round pick, thinking, well, if the Cowboys don't really do anything, or if they draft a wide receiver that maybe I don't think is very good, this could be Gallup's year fully healthy to show. But I saw Cooks' reception perception for Matt Harmon, and he's still pretty good, especially on the vertical routes, especially on those deep routes, which is going to hurt Michael Gallup. So CeeDee Lamb will still be a stud, but I think this hurts Michael Gallup.
Got to agree. I mean, you'd think that they wouldn't be looking so hard for a receiver his caliber rather than just drafting one. If they really had full confidence that Gallup could be a legit number 2 receiver. I mean, he's still recovering from injury from over a year ago. That's part of it, but still, they need something else. Also, don't forget Dalton Schultz, gone now from Dallas. There are a lot of targets being vacated in this offense. Noah Brown's also a free agent. So Cooks could actually wind up as a pretty good value in drafts. Gallup, not so much. And then under the radar move here, Devin Singletary, no longer in Buffalo. He's now with the Houston Texans. Does this mean that we should worry about Dameon Pierce at all?
I think you have to worry about him a little bit, but this isn't a move that makes me, think that Pierce is done or anything. But I do wonder if they wanted a kind of like a thunder to lightning, because Pierce, he's a bruiser, right? He's not a guy you get out in space. He's not a guy you throw the ball to. He's not a guy you run outside the tackles. He's more of a guy straight ahead, pound the rock type of guy. So I think they might view Singletary as more of the pass catcher, more of the runs to the outside. But the problem here is that Pierce is already in a limited role as just an early down grinder kind of guy. So anybody who takes anything away from him hurts his value. So certainly this is a slight knock to Pierce, and if anything happens in the draft, it'll be a big knock to Pierce. So right now I'm just kind of like cautiously looking to see what else the Texans do.
Maybe I'm overly optimistic. You know what? I actually think this is good news for Pierce. The fact that they got a guy like this who is a steady, decent running back, kind of a backup, not somebody who's really a threat to Pierce's workload. You need somebody, right, to take some of the load off here. I think this tells me that they're really not looking to invest heavily or early in the draft for a running back. And why would they? They just took Pierce last year, and they didn't go out and sign any kind of a higher caliber free agent. This tells me Pierce is still the guy. Singletary is there as the backup, as the change of pace guy. I think Pierce gets pretty much the same type of usage he was getting last year. But you know what? Even if he gets a couple, less carries here and there, that might be good because it improves his efficiency. So with the upgrades the Texans have made across the board and the upgrade they're about to make at quarterback by drafting somebody, I think this actually means Pierce should be better than he was as a rookie. Some of those players are just off limits for us this year. What about the players that we're just never drafting ever again? Check out this video and find out who they are.